Heading into the 2001 NASCAR Winston Cup Series fourth round in Atlanta, Sadler ranked 9th in the point standings, 121 back of then-leader Sterling Marlin. It was a massive turnaround for the third-year driver from Virginia, who finished a distant second to Tony Stewart in 1999's Battle for Rookie of the Year. He then only made the highlight reel in 2000 after a terrifying crash at Michigan. Those years saw him ranked just 24th and 29th in points. But the Wood Brothers' new technical alliance with Roush Racing is already paying dividends. Among the 10 new employees are a new pit crew, tire and shock specialists, plus crew chief Pat Trison, who left Roush's closing number 16 team the moment Kevin Lepage failed to qualify at Atlanta. All we've been doing in these first races this year is trying to race for points to make sure we're in good shape as far as the one-round qualifying and provisionals, says Sadler on March 11th. We've been running pretty decent, probably better than we ever have. We've tried to stay out of trouble, staying by ourselves and racing when we need to. There's always been hope that we could turn it around, and we think we've got it turned around now, adds Len Wood. We're the highest we've been in the points at this stage of the season in the last 4 years. If we can get a couple more good races, then we feel like wherever we are at that point in the standings is where we'll end up the season. We've looked at the books, and after 4 or 5 races, unless something strange happens or you have major problems, that's about where you finish. The Tuesday before Bristol marks 8 years since the Wood Brothers' 96th and most recent Cup Series win, when Morgan Shepherd claimed his final series victory at Atlanta. Sadler's own run in Atlanta was his worst of the young season, a 31st after an unscheduled stop. And at Darlington, his late race gamble on tires left him 17th, dropping him to 18th in the standings. The Woods have never won at Bristol, only a pair of runner-up finishes by the great Cale Yarborough in 1967 and 68. As for Sadler, whose girlfriend is Miss Food City, Bristol saw him score his best Cup finish in 72 series starts. He finished 7th the previous August, 2 years after he won a Busch race there. He also qualified 9th for the spring race, when he was fastest in happy hour. That time, he did so in the team's oldest car, which was built in October 1989, back when Sadler was 14.
What would it mean for you to bring the Wood Brothers their first ever win at Bristol Motor Speedway?
That'd be awesome, but that's a long shot. But we just want a good top 5, top 10 finish tomorrow. Good pit stop, stay out of trouble. If we can do that, we got a great chance.
Maybe this year, the chance will come again. Five states sue the R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company, saying the Winston Cup Series billboards on racetracks violates their promise to stop marketing to children. The plaintiffs want R.J. Reynolds to remove the billboards from tracks after each race has been run. Jim Hunter is promoted from track president of Darlington to a position within NASCAR itself, and is replaced by Andrew Gertis, then the vice president of Daytona International Speedway. For now, Hunter will continue to oversee not just Darlington, but other tracks in the region, including Rockingham and Richmond. On the sponsorship front, the Virginia Lottery sets an announcement for April 6th to announce which team they'll sponsor for Martinsville and Richmond. The driver is already believed to be Hermie Sadler, who is planned to test a Cup car at Martinsville. Another 2-day test begins in Kentucky for PPI Motorsports drivers Ricky Craven and Andy Houston. The track happens to be based near Procter & Gamble's headquarters, whose brand Tide sponsors Craven. Evernham cancels a test there for Casey Atwood, but Rick Mast is expected to test Midwest Transit's car there at the end of the month. Later in the week will come word that Charlie Presley, Midwest Transit's team manager, has left the team. For Bristol, the iconic number 3 will be painted on the apron of all 4 corners, and fans will be able to sign an Earnhardt Wall of Remembrance beneath the Kawicki Grandstand at Turn 1. Fans can also still sign Earnhardt's souvenir hauler, where the family clarifies which souvenirs are available. Anything with "in memorial" on it has not been authorized by the family. They are only selling merchandise of Earnhardt himself, just as they had during his life. They also assure fans that despite an even greater demand, there will continue to be an adequate supply. Richard Childress hasn't ruled out running the number 3 in the future, but has decided not to run it for the rest of 2001. As to his current emotions, he says, quote, "I'm kind of taking it day by day. What I try to do is think of all the good times. That gets me by. That, and having good friends to lean on. And I've really had a tremendous outpouring of friends to help me through this." With the decision made to allow the Orlando Sentinel to review Earnhardt's autopsy photos, the expert will not be Dr. Philip Villanueva, the Sentinel's original choice, but instead Dr. Barry S. Myers, a physician with a degree in mechanical engineering. But now there's a new problem in the case. Dr. Steve Bohannon, Earnhardt's attending physician after the crash, is revealed to have already examined the autopsy photos for 35 minutes back on February 21st, a day before the Earnhardt family's injunction. Attorneys for the Sentinel are shocked by the news, saying they wouldn't have been so accommodating to the family in their negotiations if they knew this prior to their agreement. At the time, it's unclear whether Dr. Bohannon examined the photos in the regular course of his professional duties, or if he did so as NASCAR's medical expert. If it were the latter, this could shed light on Mike Helton's confusing statement the previous week that NASCAR had seen these pictures without requesting to do so. On still another front, an attorney for the Volusia County Medical Examiner in Florida says the Earnhardt family's sealing of the autopsy photos violates the state's sunshine laws governing access to public records. Dr. Steve Olvey remains as outspoken as ever about NASCAR's secrecy regarding investigations of fatal accidents. "I talk to people at Formula One and IRL on a regular basis regarding safety issues," he says, "but I wouldn't know who to call at NASCAR." For example, when driver Greg Moore died in a crash at Fontana in 1999, CART requested the involvement of the Sheriff's Department of San Bernardino County. In the case of Earnhardt's crash, local authorities were no longer involved the moment Earnhardt was declared dead at the hospital. Such had been the case for much of NASCAR's existence, but many around the sport are now calling this into question, including Mike Mulhern for the Winston-Salem Journal. And now there is the sense that NASCAR officials are trying to figure out not so much what went wrong at Daytona, he writes, but rather how to explain it gracefully and to find the right moment to speak their piece. At the same time, Dr. Olvey leads a research project to create a crash data recorder through a small accelerometer placed in a driver's earpiece. The data collected will be able to determine the effectiveness of other driver safety equipment, including the Hans. What's hoped is that it will lead to much better scientific information for designing helmets and head and neck protection, he says. We'll be able to evaluate the Hans device and any evolution of that device. We'll know whether it's going in a good direction or a bad direction. Meanwhile, at the SFI Foundation's facility in Poway, California, Bill Simpson performs a stress test on 6 lap belts from the exact same batch that produced Earnhardt's belt used in the 500. 5 of the belts need at least 4,750 pounds of pressure to fail. The 6th doesn't fail after applying the maximum load of 5,800. Regardless, Bobby Labonte is looking into using a different seatbelt system, designed and manufactured by European company Willans, the same system his brother Terry had been using the last 2 years. Michael Waltrip and Steve Park are also looking into these belts instead of Simpson's. So is Tony Stewart, who used Willan belts when he raced in the IRL. Tension builds as the series approaches the next superspeedway race in Talladega, now just 3 races after Bristol. Even sponsors are weighing in on the issue. Sponsors are saying, if you don't want to go to Talladega, I think we'd be okay with it, says Bobby Labonte on March 25th. Now that time hasn't come here yet, but at least they're talking about it now. In his article on the subject, Mike Mulhern says one such sponsor had been Caterpillar, Ward Burton's primary backer. At least one unnamed driver says NASCAR is telling drivers not to talk to reporters about skipping the race or perhaps running a lap and then parking. Others, like Todd Bodine, Mark Martin, and Jeff Burton, have been disappointed by the announced lack of rule changes for Talladega. What's the race before Talladega, asks Bobby Labonte. Martinsville. You know how crew chiefs are getting suspended these days for any little thing? Maybe I need to find something to get suspended so I don't have to go to Talladega. Mulhern notes that as Labonte says this, his tone was, quote, a bit tongue-in-cheek, but with a decided edge. Despite their statement a week earlier, NASCAR does decide to make minor changes to the aero package for Talladega. Ford's rear spoiler will be shortened from 59 to 57 inches, and Dodge's roof rail will be raised slightly. Instead of curving with the roof, the rail will instead form a straight line. Dodge is still expected to be fast in that race, as they're only estimated to lose 5 to 7 of their 30 aero horsepower advantage. NASCAR doesn't cite Earnhardt's accident in this decision, but rather the data from their latest wind tunnel tests in Marietta, Georgia, following the Atlanta race. The cars examined, once again, were the Ford of Dale Jarrett, the Chevrolet of Jeff Gordon, the Dodge of Sterling Marlin, and the Pontiac of Bobby Labonte. While most anticipate Dodge as an unfair advantage, Jack Roush thinks Chevrolet has an aerodynamic edge of 200 to 300 pounds of downforce in the corners. But NASCAR's findings refute both estimates. At 3 degrees of yaw, the four manufacturers draw nearly identical readings. In a second test with the car's noses lowered, Ford has the biggest advantage. Chevrolet does, however, have a drag advantage for the superspeedways. Just 505 horsepower was needed to reach 200 miles per hour. After a difficult start to the year for Buckshot Jones, capped by an engine failure in Darlington, Bryant Frazier takes over as crew chief for the number 44, replacing Mark Tudor. Frazier had previously led Steve Grissom to his Busch Series championship in 1993. Across the way at DEI, Michael Waltrip's team loses car chief Mike Kelly, front tire changer Tim Sheets, and shop mechanic Steve Dern. Kelly joins Atwood's team at Evernham Motorsports, while Sheets goes to Morgan McClure. Sheets arrives as Robbie Gordon is reportedly bought out of his $4 million contract, taking him out of the Kodak Film Chevrolet just 5 races into the season. His replacement hasn't been announced, but Kevin Lepage has remained the rumored replacement all week. If not for Bristol, then certainly the next round in Texas. Apparently, Larry McClure had considered Lepage over the offseason and spoke to him before he picked Robbie. Lisa Sheely, Morgan McClure's PR director, is among those interviewed for Corby Yarborough's piece for the Bristol Herald-Courier, discussing the need for drivers to have public relations contacts or even a bodyguard. More pressure is put on the drivers from the sponsors and team owners, she says. It's more of a high-dollar sport, and drivers need to perform better. There are more sponsor-related functions, and time has been taken away from them. The time they do have, they focus on the race car. Morgan McClure does indeed select Kevin Lepage to run the number 4 at Bristol, but only as a temporary replacement, with a permanent choice still to be announced. Rick Mast is still among those being considered. Out of a Cup Series ride since the deal with Hank Aaron and Denny's fell through late in the 2000 season, Lepage is determined to make the most of the opportunity. In his 6 previous Cup starts at Bristol, he's never failed to finish, and in the summer of 1998 took home a track best 10th. As for Robbie, he's out of the Cup Series with most of the season still to be run. He still wants to stay in NASCAR, but with 2 months until the Indy 500, he hasn't ruled out focusing on that event instead. Among those unconcerned is Matt Kenseth, who wasn't happy with how Robbie raced him at Darlington. He pushed us up into the wall, he says. It's pretty bad when you get wrecked when you're letting somebody go by. After Fogg sent him home early from Darlington, Dave Marcus is not entered in Bristol. He will return to action the following month in Talladega, then run the Winston Open in Charlotte, the June race in Dover, then Daytona, Chicagoland, Indianapolis, the Southern 500, the fall Talladega race, and the season finale at Atlanta. The Darlington race saw Stacey Compton score his first last-place finish after an early crash. He very nearly ran the race without crew chief Chad Knaus, who at Atlanta was suspended for 2 races and fined $5,000 for not providing proof that the car's seatbelts were less than 5 years old. Team owner Mark Melling appealed both the suspension and fine, as Knaus said he directed his crew to trim away excess material from a pair of new shoulder harnesses so they weren't in Compton's way in the cockpit. As the appeal is considered, Knaus remains atop the pit box. Roush Racing doesn't appeal their own seatbelt penalty from Atlanta, leaving Kurt Busch without crew chief Matt Chambers. The announcement of Busch's new sponsor is also pushed back to the next race at Texas. It's rumored that the lower left side of the car will be painted blue. the lower right red, and decorated in a scribble pattern. There's also word it will be an all-black car with Rubbermaid as sponsor, and the Papermates logo will be on the deck lid. For the fans, it's Food City Family Race Night in Kingsport. Among the drivers signing autographs are Rusty Wallace, Terry Labonte, Ken Schrader, Mike Skinner, Randy LaJoy, Jerry Nadeau, Ryan Newman, and both David and Jeff Green. Also in attendance is Busch Series newcomer Kelly Denton, a Bristol native. Denton enters the upcoming race just 30th in points after back-to-back engine failures, but also finished 18th in the opener at Daytona. It is also on this day that legendary asphalt and dirt track racer Kenny the Shoe Shoemaker dies of heart disease at age 71. Bristol celebrates its 40th anniversary. In an article for the Herald Courier, 5 of the track's 40 greatest moments involve Dale Earnhardt, including his first career victory in 1979. Another celebrated moment is that of Johnny Utzman, a driver from nearby Bluff City. In the 1973 Volunteer 500, Utzman served as Benny Parsons' relief driver and went on to win, an important step towards Parsons' championship. It was a Friday afternoon, and Benny was having some back trouble, says Utzman, 61 at the time of his interview. He asked me if I wasn't doing anything that weekend, to bring my suit and helmet and help drive the car for him. When I got in the car, we had a big lead and went on to win. Utzman relieved Parsons in 5 races during his career, and nearly won another race before finishing second. Many of Bristol's greatest moments were aired on ESPN, which from 1981 through 2000 saw the track grow during the sport's rise in popularity. But with a new TV contract, there remains a stalemate between ESPN and NASCAR over permission to show footage on RPM Tonight. To fill content, the show's reporters still must perform interviews in the track's parking lot or at the airport as drivers arrive. To take the daily voice of motorsports and say, well, you can't have any of our highlights, just seems to be counterproductive for everybody, says Mark Quinzel, the senior vice president of programming for ESPN. I don't know if the problem is Fox or not, but we've had a long-term relationship with NASCAR. We've always been able to work things out, so we've tried to work it out with NASCAR. We have talked a little with NBC and with Fox. We have very good reciprocal relationships with Fox and NBC, and the other networks for a whole bunch of things. This is really the one exception. Quinzel continues, there is no clear answer one way or the other as to whose problem it is. All I know is right now it's our problem, because we can't give the race fans what they expect. NASCAR needs to figure out how to get this done. NASCAR is already seeing shortened fields, and if guys can't get sponsors because they can't get exposure, then they'll see more shortened fields, and that is bad for the sport. The story comes just days after a rumor that ESPN, ABC, and CBS are considering creating a competing stock car series of their own. The state of the sport is on everyone's lips, but already there have been efforts by the sanctioning body to separate this from the Earnhardt investigation. Not all attempts have been successful. NASCAR.com reports a record 4.1 million unique users visited their site since Turner Sports Interactive relaunched it on February 9th, though concede that this was influenced by the Earnhardt tragedy. On Monday, Richard Petty, Jeff Gordon, and Darrell Waltrip appear on Larry King Live to discuss the sport's future. On this day, Waltrip joins a panel at Virginia Intermont College as part of the Robinette Lecture Series, which includes Mike Helton, Dale Jarrett, Richard Childress, Steve Smith, and Jeff Bird. The panel, entitled The Business of NASCAR, sees Waltrip make a bold prediction. I think NASCAR will continue to become more interactive with computers and TV, he says. I can see a racetrack someday where a fan can actually buy a seat and have a console in front of him. The fan will have a steering wheel and actually be able to punch up whatever car he wants to get inside with an in-car camera. He will even be able to wear a helmet if he wants to and go around the racetrack just like their hero. In Cup Series practice, Elliott Sadler slaps the wall with the right rear. The damage doesn't seem so bad at first, but the team still rolls out the backup car. That car only qualifies 38th, needing a provisional just to make the field. Entering the 2024 season only once, when Michael Waltrip started 39th in the spring of '97, have the Wood brothers ever started worse in a Cup race than on this day. And that race, also at Bristol, saw Waltrip only finish 21st. The reason is simple. With 2 pit roads and no rule yet in place to offset the disadvantage, Sadler will have to pit on the backstretch. Only twice has a driver won from there. Davey Allison from 19th in the spring of 1990 and Dale Earnhardt from 26th in the summer of 99. Mark Martin had this disadvantage in the 2000 running of this race, where he rolled off 34th and finished the first car one lap down in 16th. Since we qualified so bad last spring, we had to pit on the backstretch. That hurt us from the very beginning, he says on this day. We had a car that could have won the race, but once we got a lap down, we didn't have the luck to get it back. Our finish did not reflect what a great run we had. This time, fortune smiles on Martin, who begins the weekend fastest in opening practice. In qualifying, Kevin Harvick lays down a fast lap of his own, threatening to sweep both the Busch and Cup poles. He does so in the exact same chassis he ran in his series debut at Rockingham, also known as Dale Earnhardt's Atlanta winner from March of 2000. But Martin takes the pole away, his 7th at Bristol, the 40th of his career, and first since October 24th, 1999 at Rockingham. Later in the week, Mark's son Matt wins a quarter midget race after starting in the back. Harvick settles in 3rd, as Sterling Marlin will roll off to the Viagra cars outside. Taking 4th is Rusty Wallace, who seeks his 10th Bristol win after sweeping both events in 2000. Rusty hasn't tested at Bristol, and the car intended to race here was wrecked in the early laps at Las Vegas. He instead brings a brand new car, PC21, and simply names it Bristol. The team has done its best to replicate the exact setup they ran the previous year. The 5th spot goes to Todd Bodine, who on Tuesday picked up a new associate backer in Purina Dog Chow. He runs the same car Darrell Waltrip ran at both Bristol and Dover races during his victory tour. After his Darlington win and 2 poles, Dale Jarrett brings his favorite Bristol car, the one with which he took the checkered flag when he first ran it in August of 1997. 1 year earlier, the car began its life as the Lincoln Mark 8 that Michael Kranifus designed for John Andretti. The car has since finished 3rd and 4th in 1998, 3rd in the spring of 99, and 9th in the fall of 2000. But this time, Jarrett only qualifies in 19th. Several drivers have costly slip-ups in qualifying, which Kyle Petty attributes to Goodyear's new tire. Regardless, the Petty team puts up their best showing of the young season. Kyle qualifies 7th, his best run since he was outside pole at Sears Point the previous summer, with John Andretti 11th and Buckshot Jones, new crew chief in tow, taking 21st. We've revamped our company, redone the way we do everything, says Richard Petty. We're working toward a baseline of getting everyone running consistent. Once we do that, we can build toward a future. Among the changes have been lengthy meetings after practice, where all 3 Petty drivers and crew chiefs exchange notes, all with sights set on the future. If you look at the teams that switched to Dodge, we have to be honest and say we were probably the worst team, says Kyle. We're working hard just to get back to ground level. We know it's not about this season. It's about the 2004 season and the 2005 season. That's when we think we could be running for championships. John Andretti, fresh off his 6th place showing in Darlington, doesn't mind the approach. I'm fine with the big picture as long as I'm in it, he says. This is a great organization, and I fully believe one day it will again be among the best in the sport. Kenny Wallace at Eel River Racing picks up another one-race sponsor in both Food City and Rayovac batteries. Wallace had been working overtime to promote himself and the team, saying he needs $166,000 minimum to run a race, or $7 million for the season. Barry Dodson says the team nearly landed Crown Royal as a sponsor, but much like their Penthouse deal weeks earlier, NASCAR denied approval. Liquor sponsors won't be approved in NASCAR until 2005. For now, the focus is on Sunday, where Wallace is qualified in 31st. Both Rick Mast and Andy Houston bounce back from their Darlington DNQs to make Sunday's race. Houston does so by the skin of his teeth, taking the 36th spot on speed, just ahead of a bewildered Tony Stewart, who remains sluggish enough to need a provisional in 37th. Kurt Busch takes 39th for his first Cup race at Bristol, ahead of fellow rookie Ron Hornaday Jr. Kevin Lepage's first race for Morgan McClure places him 42nd on the grid, ahead of Mike Wallace. Both are fortunate to make the race, as 46 teams arrive to contest the 43 spots. The first driver sent home is Carl Long, who returns with Mansion Motorsports for his first attempt since the Daytona 500. Jason Leffler, 41st in points after a rough start, is handed his first DNQ in the Singular Dodge. Singular's logos will go on teammate Sterling Marlin's quarter panels and rear deck lid, and on Sunday, Leffler will sit atop Marlin's pit box to learn from the sidelines. The final member is Hut Strickland in the Don Levy racing effort. Strickland's car carried bonus sponsorship from country singer Billy Ray Cyrus to promote his new album Southern Rain. Cyrus, who will perform the national anthem on Sunday, will have to wait for his face to be on a race car again. He's currently working on a new TV series on the PAX network called Doc, which in August 2002 will appear on BAM Racing's number 49.
And welcome to Bristol, Tennessee, where today on FX it's the 6th Busch race of the year, the Cheez-It 250. This racetrack nestled within Thunder Valley, bringing out the lightning of NASCAR and some of the best bumping and grinding action you'll ever see. We're in the Tri-Cities area in eastern Tennessee. Those cities, Kingsport, Johnson City, and of course, Bristol, all part of the Appalachian Mountain Range. This unique arena usually produces a show fit for a stadium. This weekend, expecting nothing less. Sterling Marlin, who's from Tennessee, won the Busch race here last year. Kevin Harvick is on the pole today as the fans filing in. NASCAR's most exciting short track with some big-time racing, and you get a look at where we are. That's the Hollywood Hotel. We're right in the garage area, right on top of all the action.
While it's been all but confirmed that Jeff Green will drive Richard Childress's number 30 entry later in the 2001 season, the LTN Hour radio show stirs a rumor on Friday that a different Jeff will drive the car in 2002. Perhaps Jeff Burton. Burton is shocked. He doesn't know where the rumor came from. It says he has no desire to leave either Roush or sponsor Citgo. He says he's instead focused on developing a new carbon fiber seat, working with both PPI Motorsports and Dr. John Melvin, a Michigan-based biomedical engineer. By Saturday, Austin Cameron has also joined the rumor mill to run the number 30, as he's spotted at Bristol wearing an America Online hat. Also touring the track is Jeff Bodine, who's been out of a ride since he made several one-off starts at the end of 2000. The Childress rumor also comes up during the pre-race show for the Busch race.
There's talk that you're going to run for Richard Childress, maybe 6 or 7 races.
Have y'all heard that?
Yeah. Yes or no? Is there any truth to that?
A little bird come flying the other day. We caught him. We'll know next week.
All right, you'd like that to happen?
Oh, I think so. I mean, if I was going to the Winston Cup Series, there's 4 or 5 teams that I would want to go drive for, and Richard Childress would be one of them. So I've got a great opportunity with my Quick Forward in the Busch Series, and I don't want anything to get in the way of that. But also I have to look for the future, too.
Also eyeing a return to the Cup Series is Eric Smith, who despite failing to qualify for all 7 of his attempts from 1995 to 1996, did race in the Winston Open in both seasons. Smith is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, a professional pilot, and an electrical engineer. Smith seeks to become the first Native American Cup driver since Roy Tyner of the Lumbee tribe raced from 1957 to 1970. Smith is of the Iroquois Indian Nation and the Tonawanda Band of Senecas, located in upstate New York. While Smith will fall just short of his goal to make a race, another Native American will make a Cup start. In 2015, Derek White of the Mohawk tribe will finish 39th at Loudon. After running the ARCA opener in Daytona, Dan Pardis says he's planning to return to the Busch Series with sponsorship from the Outdoor Channel Incorporated on Judy Motorsports number 32. Having acquired 3 race-ready cars from Bill Amick that were once run by Bill's son Lyndon Amick, Pardis plans to return at Nashville, then run 7 more races starting at Charlotte. Mindful of the increased engine expense discussed in the lead-up to the previous Busch race at Darlington, NASCAR is considering a one-engine rule at tracks with races 300 miles and shorter. Jimmy Makar and Joe Gibbs had originally been against such measures, but now have come around to the idea of cutting costs. In 2000, Joe Gibbs Racing spent an additional $2 million trying to catch Penske, who, like the new Dodge teams, had access to Ilmore's Formula One technology for their qualifying motors. Makar suggests a drop to 500 horsepower. So I personally think it's time we backed off on motor and started building motors with a lot less horsepower. A lot less, he says, either by cubic inches or something. We're going way too fast at some of these places. We can't continue to put restrictor plates on these engines at Daytona and Talladega. Other teams looking to cut costs recommend limiting the number of sets of tires, similar to the Busch and Truck Series. Joe Nemechek says this would, quote, add drama to how the races will finish, and team owner Andy Petrie suggests a 7-set limit. Prior to the Busch race, Jeff Hammond uses Jason Leffler's car to explain the many unique changes made to race cars for Bristol, including bigger brakes, bumper bars, and raising the rear of the car from 35.5 inches to 36.5. Hammond also believes that the 3 drivers to watch in Saturday's 250-lap race are Matt Kenseth, Kenny Wallace, and Jimmy Spencer. The race is on Fox Network FX, which fans have been requesting their cable providers add to their service through a 1-800 number.
This joint is all about driver. It's not about car. It's not about aerodynamics, Larry. It's not all about who's got the best handling car necessarily. It's about the guy that can get up on the wheel, grunt it out, and hang in there, because this place is tough.
While he fell just short of the pole for the Cup race, Kevin Harvick has a wicked fast Busch car, the same one that led 241 laps at Bristol the previous August. On his first qualifying lap, he shatters Jeff Green's track record, then beats his own record on the second lap, clocking in at 15.318 seconds. Starting alongside is Matt Kenseth. The pair are among the 6 double-duty drivers who are also competing in Sunday's Cup race. Ryan Newman rolls off third as one of 10 drivers in the field making their first ever starts at Bristol. Ironically, it's Newman's worst qualifying run so far. Newman is still on probation for the rest of the year following his post-race tangle with Tim Fedewa at Darlington, which also handed both drivers a $5,000 fine. I am looking forward to racing at Bristol, said Newman at Family Race Night on Thursday. We had a pretty decent test session here, even though we only got to run a few laps because of rain. Just from what I have heard before, this is a pretty tight little racetrack, and you can run up onto someone pretty quick. All weekend, Newman has been getting tips from Rusty Wallace. Mark Martin is on hand to help Greg Biffle, who starts 5th. Further back, the point leaders both have their work cut out for them. Jeff Green, the Darlington winner, rolls off 18th with teammate Jason Keller second in points back in 28th. Local driver Kelly Denton is also well back in the lineup, starting 38th. Rolling off 42nd is the Jay Robinson entry of Jerry McCart, who on this weekend makes his first Busch Series attempt since October 1992 in Charlotte. McCart missed the show that day, but today has qualified for his series debut, and in a backup car no less. He's soon joined by Christian Elder, the 20th place qualifier, whose team made an unapproved engine change after happy hour.
So crank your easy chair up to 36 degrees on the right side, and let's get ready to go racing in Thunder Valley. Green flag, we're racing at Bristol.
Made it through one end clean.
Boy, they bottle up fast, though, Larry. And there's not much outside lane right now, so you've got to work hard. Got to even take a chance to get the car to the inside if at all possible.
On the break, Harvick, Newman, and Kenny Wallace move into the top 3 spots as Kenseth is stuck in the high lane. The same goes for Michael Waltrip, who forgot to tell his crew in happy hour he had issues with his steering box. The issue is even worse now. He can barely get the Aaron's Dream Machine through the corners. In the pre-race segment, Jeff Green correctly predicted the high groove wouldn't come in until the final laps, meaning any driver trapped up there will lose several spots. The first caution falls on lap 9. Shane Hall gets into Chad Chaffin, blocking Jamie McMurray's path. McMurray stops just in time, only for Kelly Denton to send Ashton Lewis Jr. directly into McMurray's Chevrolet. The 27 remains on pit road for the restart, where Harvick again pulls away. Moments later, Jerry McCart pulls his backup car behind the wall, citing handling issues. His first and only Busch Series start will see him finish in last place. Next to the garage is All-Pro Series driver Ron Young, who on lap 20 loses control into turn 3 and slaps the outside wall with the driver's side. Christian Elder's right front damage seems to indicate he got into Young, but replays show that Young lost control on his own. On the lap 28 restart, Harvick has to contend with Kevin Grubb, who under the first caution lost at least 2 laps for the crew to look under the hood. Grubb tries to get by, but Harvick won't let him. Seconds later, the third caution falls. Brad Teague put Charlie Henderson's Bristol-based team into its first race since the previous summer, though the team had to make repairs after he bounced off the wall in happy hour. Off turn 4, Teague gets into Sammy Sanders. Sanders nearly saves it, then plows into the inside wall. Thus ends Sanders' third and final Busch Series start. 3 cautions in 31 laps, and 3 cars are already out of the race. Under caution, Ryan Newman gets a piece of debris off his grille by shutting off the brake fans. Greg Biffle reports his car is extremely loose. Just like Darlington, this is not the car Biffle planned to run. He demolished that car in testing. Back under green on lap 37, and this time Harvick easily clears the lap car of Grubb. Further back, Jeff Green is still trying to rally back. He worked out a deal with Jay Sauter to let him by, but so far Sauter is holding him off. By lap 47, with McMurray's damaged Chevrolet back on track, Tim Fedewa is marching through the field, while Mike Dillon is the latest to be stranded in the high lane and falling back. Mark Green bounces off the wall after the engine locks up, and he barely gets to the apron in time. Just as he does, Rich Bickle slaps the turn 2 wall and drops the window net, bringing out the caution. Michael Waltrip takes this opportunity to let his crew examine the faulty steering box. David Green is penalized for his crew jumping over the wall too soon. A cleanup crew drops one of their brooms, which slides clear down the banking into traffic. Harvick gets another good restart, just as Ashton Lewis returns from his lap 9 accident. 7 laps later, Christian Elder draws the 5th caution when he spins and stalls on the apron of turn 1, and Tim Sauter gets his lap back from Harvick.
Here we go, boogity-boogity, little action in the pits.
Among the leaders following Harvick down pit road is Todd Bodine, whose team had to make an A-frame change on the 00, making the car loose off the corners. He also happens to be the answer to the broadcast's fun fact, as the first driver to win on Bristol's concrete surface. After weeks of pit stop futility, Todd has his Cup Series pit crew take over. The difference is immediate, and Todd remains among the leaders. But not everyone is pitted. Goodyear has brought such a durable tire, the same one run at Rockingham, Las Vegas, and Darlington, that 5 drivers have elected for 2 tire changes, or none at all. On top of that, there's now a threat of rain, as clouds have gathered since the start, the halfway point barely 50 laps away. 2 drivers have stayed out. One is Jimmy Spencer, who's back with Phoenix Racing after he took over at Darlington. The other is the number 01, the Reese Motorsports entry, which had only planned a part-time schedule following a 23rd place debut in Rockingham. Their driver, who started 29th, is 1999 Pikes Peak winner Andy Santerre. On the lap 74 restart, Santerre is all over Spencer for the lead, and is just completing the pass when...
Trouble turn 1! 11 cars are piled up in the first corner.
And our champion's up in the middle of them.
Bobby Hamilton Jr., Mike McLaughlin is there, Shane Hall, Jeff Green, Mike Dillon, Kevin Grubb, and the 36 of Hank Parker.
Green's car is wiped out.
I saw 2 of our top 5 in points in that wreck. Of course, Jeff Green, who's leading the points of the 20 car, Mike McLaughlin, he was in 5th in points.
Look at this, is, believe it or not, this is Bobby Hamilton Jr.'s car.
I don't know who that is.
It's Hamilton, or what's left of it.
That looks like a Dr. Pepper candy got squished.
Heading into turn 1, and perhaps in response to contact between Ryan Newman and Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Purvis bumps Jeff Green into a spin, causing a chain reaction behind. Greg Biffle ramps over the nose of Bobby Hamilton Jr.'s Chevrolet, collecting Hank Parker Jr., Mike Dillon, Shane Hall, and a battered Christian Elder. Also trapped are both Marty Houston and Mike McLaughlin, though both continue with minor damage. Green isn't so fortunate. His streak of 5 straight top 10 finishes to start the 2001 season ends with a 38th place finish that sends him tumbling out of the point lead.
What happened?
I don't know, Dick. You tell me. Somebody got bottled up in front of us, and I hit whoever's in front of me. I clipped him a little bit. But we're going to be all right. And then here we go wide. I got wide open from the back, but what you get when you qualify 18th, I guess. But our car's pretty good. We were going to get up through there, but you can never pass guys if you only run 5 or 6 laps and somebody wrecks. You know, you never can get anybody wore down, but so much for the points lead.
Mike Dillon spends a long time in the infield care center before he's later transported to a local hospital for further evaluation, requiring the ambulance to cross the track. Mike Skinner is called upon to drive in Dillon's place should the number 21 return to action, but despite the crew working alongside Green in the garage, Dillon ultimately takes home 37th. Up front, Santerre is shown as the leader over Spencer and Michael Waltrip. On the lap 92 restart, Ryan Newman slides up the track and loses positions. Kelly Denton gets into another driver, this time Brad Baker, who spins but doesn't bring out the yellow. Denton then succeeds on lap 103 when he spins Elton Sawyer, and Christian Elder spins in a separate incident. Prior to the race, John Darby warned the field that he has 8 comfortable seats in the NASCAR hauler for any driver who races too aggressively. By the end of this day, one of those seats may have Denton's name on it, as he is soon penalized 5 laps for aggressive driving. Santerre lets Kevin Grubb get his lap back. Under caution, the Reese team is still planning to stay out as long as possible to both offset their poor qualifying run and perhaps capitalize on a rain-shortened race. But the clouds are starting to thin, and his tires are beginning to show their age. Nevertheless, Santerre remains the leader on lap 108 over Spencer, who is now dealing with Harvick in third and Kenseth in fourth. On lap 117, Chad Chaffin gets in the left rear of Kevin Grubb, leaving the number 37 with heavy right front damage. Santerre slows again to let lap cars pass him as the caution falls for an 8th time. Kelly Denton's frustrating day continues as he now spins himself. Under this caution, Jimmy Spencer pits from second, and the crew notices smoke from what they think is a transmission issue. He returns to the track well back in the order, moving Harvick and Kenseth up to Santerre's rear bumper. It's hard to relay such information, as Santerre is having radio issues and has had to communicate with his crew through hand signals. Fortunately, Santerre's crew chief has experience with such things. He's Stan Meserve. A racer from Maine, Meserve made 31 Cup starts in 1968, including one of the first ever run at Bristol. Back under green, and Harvick is all over Santerre for the lead, though it's not until now that he even learns who's driving this number 01 car. When the spotter tells Harvick it's Santerre, he gives him room when the pair catch lap traffic.
I admire him for that. He said, I just never felt comfortable there. Whoop, got caught behind Christian Elder. Whoa, man.
He just barely got back in front of Kevin Harvick.
But I tell you, Harvick, now that shows maturity.
Yes.
A year ago, Harvick would have nailed him.
This close call brings Kenseth right to Harvick's bumper, and then a resurgent Todd Bodine to fourth. Santerre remains up front for 72 laps until lap 149, when Harvick and Todd work their way past into the top 2 spots. Santerre holds third until Kenseth gets by on lap 155. By now, Santerre's radio is starting to work again, but the crew is still planning on replacing it when he comes in for fresh tires. Servicing the car will be Kenny Wallace's Cup Series pit crew from Eel River Racing. The opportunity comes with 86 to go when Marty Houston spins off turn 4, allowing Santerre to pit under caution with leaders. On the front stretch pits, Harvick gets off pit road ahead of Todd and Kenseth. Santerre pits on the backstretch, throws the non-functioning radio out the window, and gets his fresh tires. Jeff Purvis returns to the track after the big wreck, completing an extended stop on pit road. As they rejoin the pack, there's more bad luck for Todd Bodine. Unbelievably, even his Cup crew has let him down. 2 loose lug nuts on the left front means a black flag and another trip down pit road. This would ordinarily help Harvick, but he's still not the leader. Randy LaJoie beat all the leaders off pit road with a 2-tire stop. Back during practice, LaJoie discovered his car ran its fastest laps on worn tires. LaJoie's is also not the first car in line, as Elton Sawyer is the last car on the lead lap, placing his Ford ahead of both LaJoie and Harvick for the lap 170 restart. The result is chaos.
Welcome back to the Cheez It 250 on FX. On the restart, Kevin Harvick made a quick move, too quick, the NASCAR officials adjudged, and he is being given the black flag.
I got to see this again. I'm not sure what happened.
Harvick is black flagged for jumping the start and is just about to serve the penalty when the caution falls again. Chad Chaffin spins off turn 4, and in the chain reaction, the penalized Todd Bodine rear-ends Jason Keller, spinning Mike McLaughlin. Harvick rolls through pit road, keeping him on the lead lap, and Todd pulls behind the wall for a new radiator, leaving him 19th. Just returned from his Las Vegas penalty, Harvick's crew chief Todd Berrier pleads his case to NASCAR. A replay shows Harvick made his move on LaJoie after the green flag dropped. The penalty is not rescinded. NASCAR will say LaJoie was the control car, and that Harvick should have stayed behind him.
Well, here's another look. See if we can see the starter.
See if we can see the green flag. Here,
It's out right there. It's out.
Yeah, there's no way. I don't buy that.
On lap 178, LaJoie builds up a 5-car length lead.
Not bad strategy this late in the race. Track position, track position, track position.
That's bullshit.
but Larry Foyt's wreck wipes it away with the 11th caution of the day. The next restart sees Kenseth filling LaJoie's mirrors, and with 64 to go, gives him a bump off turn 4. He's still up front when another of the day's big stories comes to an unfortunate end.
Trouble turn 3, Andy Santerre got turned around by Brad Teague.
Oh, man.
Oh, that looked like a bump 'em and dump 'em.
I think that 75's been involved in a couple of incidences today.
David Green, Jay Sauter getting their lap back from the leader, Randy LaJoie, there in the 34 and the 43 car.
Boy, but the heartbreak is sitting right there in the turn. Look at this poor guy. Leading the race. Everything going his way.
He was coming back up through the pack. He made it back up to about 10th spot after his pit stop. Let's show you what happened.
He's on the outside here of the 75 car. They just get together, getting down in the turn there. 75's laps down.
Andy Santerre's race is over. After climbing back up to 10th, he will finish 31st. There are now 54 laps to go. LaJoie remains a leader over Matt Kenseth, but Tim Fedewa is now up to 3rd, and Jimmy Johnson is 4th. Like Biffle, Johnson is not running his primary car. He wrecked it mere moments after the team unloaded it for opening practice. He qualified 6th in the backup, and all day has been irritated by the number of cautions.
Jimmy Johnson, one of the few guys already looking forward to 2002 when you'll get a new teammate, some guy named Jeff Gordon, Chris.
Yeah, Gordon, it's going to be fun, but they've been a big help here. The Hendrick Group has, on top of all the hard work from Herzog Motorsports and the support from Excedrin. We're looking forward to a good day.
Moments later, when Kenseth finally clears LaJoie for the lead, Johnson will try and follow Fedewa into 3rd.
And Randy LaJoie continues to lose position.
Jimmy Johnson got loose and he saved it somehow.
He was loose for 500 feet.
As Johnson finds his place in line, Fedewa and Kenseth dodge multiple incidents that somehow don't draw the caution. With 50 to go, Harvick spins David Green. With 45 to go, Jimmy Spencer slows due to a failing engine and tries to find his way down. 2 laps later, Christian Elder spins on the apron of turn 4. Still, the green stays out. With 17 to go, Kenseth bumps Chad Little, whose 12th place car is last on the lead lap. Ahead of them, Michael Waltrip is racing Jason Keller for 10th. Fedewa catches Kenseth, determined to take the victory. To this point, his 18th place finish at Darlington, the one where he was spun by Ryan Newman after the race, has actually been his best finish of the 2001 season so far. He comes close, but on the final lap needs another 352 thousandths of a second.
Traffic well out in front of him as we begin the last lap.
And here they come.
Matt Kenseth gets his 12th career Busch Series victory.
Your wife Terry was in tears in those last few laps as she was pulling for you, and why not? 27th in points, best finish so far had been 18th. Does this turn a tough year around or what?
Yeah, it sure does. You know, I was hoping we'd get that darn Visine car. He's won enough for these races, but he drove a heck of a race. We had good pit stops today, and you know, we've had them all year, and today to get this Phillips 66 to a second was a great run for us, and it's some momentum and some confidence in all of us. We need it bad. The whole team needs it. You know, we've just struggled as a team, and this will sure help us, and we needed it.
Fedewa's isn't the only strong performance. In all, 3rd place LaJoie, 4th place Johnson, and 9th place Tim Sauter earned their best finishes since Daytona. Mike McLaughlin finishes 13th, having never finished better than 14th all season. His Joe Gibbs effort is so set on finding sponsorship that they're reportedly offering any brand that signs for 2002 and 2003 the rest of 2001 for free, plus an option to be an associate for the team's cup drivers. Another impressive run belongs to Stevie Hodgson, a driver from Murfield, England. Hodgson drives for Joe Bessie, whose cup team shut down the previous season. Hodgson qualifies 43rd and last for his series debut, then dodges the day's chaos to finish 16th, 4 laps down. Despite his controversial black flag on a day that saw him lead a race-high 86 laps, Harvick finishes 7th, chasing down Kenny Wallace and Ryan Newman all the way to the finish line. The run is enough to move Harvick into the point lead, 21 points ahead of Jason Keller, who remains 2nd after an 11th place finish. Jeff Green slips to third, 56 points back, but still 31 points ahead of Biffle, who also wrecked out.
We didn't have it good enough to beat the 2 and the 0-0, but, we're in the right place at the right time.
With his second win in the last 4 Busch races at Bristol, Kenseth turns his attention to Sunday's race, where he'll roll off 24th. In happy hour later that Saturday, he climbs from 42nd to 15th on the speed charts, but with 5 minutes to go, he spins and slams the wall with the driver's side. Kenseth is okay, and the team scrambles to piece his car together for the race. Rusty Wallace barely beats Mark Martin for the fastest time, with the surprising Casey Atwood ranking third. Atwood will roll off 16th on Sunday. Also impressive are both cars from Andy Petrie Racing, as Joe Nemechek takes 4th ahead of Bobby Hamilton in 6th. Nemechek will start 20th and Hamilton in 6th.
Look at this crowd, and look at this beautiful jewel of a speedway. A small track, steeply banked. It is packed with fans, and what they want to see is action. Welcome to the 6th NASCAR Winston Cup Series race of 2001.
During pre-race ceremonies, there is a moment of silence in honor of Dale Earnhardt, concluded by 3 bursts of fireworks. When Billy Ray Cyrus performs the national anthem, he concludes by holding up 3 fingers. The decision has been made to not replace Dale Earnhardt in the IROC Series for 2001, trimming the field from 12 entrants to 11 for the rest of the year. When the series returns the next month at Talladega, Tony Stewart will continue to drive in place of an injured Gilles de Ferran. On the Cup side, there are also plans in place for Dale Earnhardt Jr. to run a few special paint schemes later in the season. Ducks Unlimited will back him at Charlotte in October, and there's word that a baseball-themed paint scheme will be run in both the Winston and the Pepsi 400 in Daytona. On pit road, Johnny Benson Jr. and Ken Schrader have swapped rear tire changers. Prior to the Busch race, Benson and crew chief James Ince are interviewed. The team has tried to fight burnout by holding their crew to only a 5-day, 40-hour work week. Still, the Fox crew can't help but grill both of them about the pit crew swap with Jeff Gordon's team in the closing stages of the Darlington race.
How's everybody responded to the fact that last week you had to make a change on pit road during the race?
I think everybody's responded extremely well, Jeff. It was a situation that everybody on the Valvoline team wants to win racing. As you very well know, you don't get those opportunities very often. When they come, you got to capitalize on them. And, we had a meeting right after the race in the truck, and everybody was feeling really, really good about it. We had a lot of conversation early in the week. And, those guys were going to be just as happy standing in victory lane, whether they pitted the race car or not. We have to remember, these are the same guys that screw these race cars together that are making them fast to begin with. So everybody felt okay with that.
And again, Jeff Gordon's pit crew helping out once he was out of the race, stepping in for your normal pit crew in a race that you had a chance to win. And even though you're on the same page, is it a little bit embarrassing to the pit crew guys? And as kind of the leader, the point guy, Johnny, do you have to kind of rally the troops afterwards to get them ready for the next race?
Well, actually, we didn't, because the guys are, like James says, wanting to win races, and that's what we were trying to accomplish. And like he pointed out, those guys work on this race car. It's not that they would have been excluded from anything, because they're the ones that bolt these cars together and make them fast, make it, enjoyable for me to go drive these cars. And it's, you don't want to have to leave that spot, but in the same token, they want to know and do what it takes to make sure we get in victory lane sometime this year.
Jack Smith, chairman and CEO of Food City, gives the command.
Gentlemen, start your engine.
And all you're hoping for right now on this start's a good clean start. Don't get run into by someone behind you. And everybody wants to get to the inside. Big battle to get down.
Green flag, and we're racing at Bristol. Mark Martin with a good jump, the front 4, single file.
Furious over the penalty that cost him the win a day before, Kevin Harvick jumps to second, his car skating sideways off turn 2. By the beginning of the silent lap 3, he storms into the lead, dropping Mark Martin back to 5th. Mike Wallace snaps loose in last place, and Jerry Nadeau spins on his own and backs into the wall with a left rear. Behind him, Michael Waltrip jumps on the brakes, causing a stack-up with Jeff Burton, Stacy Compton, and Kenny Wallace, and Kurt Busch spins. Nadu goes to the garage for repairs as Harvick takes the lap 11 restart over Marlin and now Todd Bodine, who's soon caught by Rusty Wallace. Skinner gets under Waltrip. The Evernham cars of Atwood and Elliott battle side by side, and on lap 19 comes the first Crank It Up. Johnny Benson's crew told him to run with 80% aggression, but after his runner-up finish in this race 1 year earlier, he's determined to claw his way up from 28th on the grid. On lap 24, when Robert Presley comes down on him in turn 3, Benson holds his line. Presley spins up the track and backs into the wall, just like Nadu, causing Jeff Burton to spin to the apron. As he does, Jeff can't hear his team on the radio. Crew chief Frankie Stoddard doesn't have the same headset as Todd Parrott, crew chief for Dale Jarrett, who has a noise-canceling microphone. On the restart, Kenny Wallace tries to get his lap back from Harvick, but can't. Harvick's car is running even faster than it had in practice. Seconds later, turn 3 gets its third victim when Mike Skinner drills Andy Houston heading into the corner. Unlike the previous 2 wrecks, Houston climbs from his car, which is towed behind the wall. Under caution, Harvick reports his battery is showing just 12 volts instead of the usual 14 to 15, so Richard Childress tells him to turn off all his fans. It doesn't seem to affect the car's performance, as he gets another good jump on Sterling Marlin for the lap 39 restart. After a strong qualifying run, Kyle Petty still holds fast to the 7th spot, but has now been caught by Ken Schrader and Bobby Hamilton. Hamilton's running the same car he drove last week in Darlington, and intends to keep running it until it falls apart. Todd Bodine continues to hold off Rusty until lap 53, by which time Harvick holds a 0.6 of a second lead over Marlin. By lap 67, Nadu is returned to the race, several laps down, joined by the equally battered number 77 of Presley. Nadu will finish 30th, Presley in 28th. Both are the first to be caught by Harvick as he starts to weave through lap traffic. Andy Houston's Ford remains the only car in the garage and soon takes over the 43rd spot. Jeff Burton is still back in the order after his pair of incidents, joined by both Tony Stewart and Bill Elliott. Elliott loses a lap on the 72nd circuit. Back near the front, Kyle Petty remains in 6th, now behind Hamilton. Dale Earnhardt Jr. had a fast car in happy hour, even after the crew had to make repairs to the car's nose. But now he gets booted to the high lane, allowing a line of cars to speed by. Among these is his teammate Steve Park, 17th at the green flag, and back in the same car that won Rockingham and should have won Darlington. Interestingly, the car with which Park ran both 2000 Bristol races and won the pole in August is now being driven by teammate Michael Waltrip. Park is hoping for some long runs, where this car consistently comes alive. In practice, Park ran 137 laps on one set of tires and had just 0.4 of drop-off. The next caution comes on lap 78.
Well, we got a spin on the backstretch. Kurt Busch, I believe, in the 97.
Oh, and he just barely caught Rusty Wallace, and Rusty saved it.
The close call is anything but. Kurt bounces directly into the left rear wheel of Rusty's Ford, cutting down the tire. Just like in Darlington, he's in the wrong place at the wrong time. But this time at least gets to make his scheduled stop. It's a slow one, though, at 25.8 seconds. Marks is slow too, even after his loose condition corrected itself in the early laps. Harvick reports he's free off the corner and gets a half pound out of the right rear. Harvick blasts out of his stall, but at that same instant in the stall right in front of him, Sterling Marlin backs up to get around Martin. The two make contact, shoving in Harvick's left front fender. At pit exit, Harvick leads over Marlin, now third place Kyle Petty, who takes 2 tires, but Harvick has to pit a second time for repairs. He returns to the track in 38th spot with 420 laps to go. This moves Kyle Petty to second, behind fellow Dodge driver Sterling Marlin. Marlin and Mark Martin become the only drivers to lead every Cup race in 2001, though Jeff Gordon still has plenty of time to join them. Back under green, Marlin leaves Petty behind, but 3 laps later, Junior gets into Ken Schrader's left rear, cutting down a tire and sending the M&M's Pontiac hard into the outside wall. Schrader climbs out while Junior continues with a piece torn from his right front fender. Schrader will finish 35th. Just like at Darlington, Jeremy Mayfield is showing some speed. After starting 30th, he's been relegated to the backstretch pits, where he and a neighboring Michael Waltrip have to coordinate their stops to avoid running into each other. Kenny Wallace and Jeff Burton have the same problem. On lap 105, Harvick is up to 26th, taking the spot from Junior, but the battle is up front. Todd Bodine couldn't get up to speed in happy hour using his setup from Saturday's Busch Series race. Whatever he's running now, it's enough to track down Marlin for the lead. On the 109th lap, Joe Nemechek pulls behind the wall with overheating issues. He's the first driver officially out of the race, but still ranked ahead of everyone who's wrecked so far. On lap 111, Jeff Gordon takes the 4th spot from Kyle Petty and sets after 3rd place Mark Martin, the two of them running by themselves. A few spots behind, Petty's teammate John Andretti takes 6th from Bobby Hamilton, opening a door for Ward Burton. Fresh off Andretti's best run at Darlington in years, the Petty team had a successful test, and sharing notes has reaped rewards not just in qualifying, but the race itself. On lap 116, Rick Mast comes up to speed after an unscheduled stop, then ducks back down pit road and goes to the garage, joining Houston and Nemechek. Up front, Todd tries to lead his first Cup race at Bristol, but still can't get around Marlin. Behind them, Martin and Gordon are closing, the number 24 bouncing back from his engine failure in Darlington with the fastest car on the track. So fast that on lap 119, Martin lets Gordon take the 3rd spot. Bodine's car starts to push, and by lap 125, Gordon is all over him, ready to take 2nd place. By then, Andretti is up to 5th, having passed Petty, whose car is now loose due to the hot track temperatures, slipping to 8th. Petty calls for a chassis adjustment on his next stop, but as the run continues under green, he soon falls out of the top 10, down to 16th. On lap 143, Gordon finally gets around Todd for 2nd, and in just 4 laps has caught race leader Marlin in traffic. Todd keeps up the pace, but now must contend with Andretti, who's up to 4th and reeling in his Ford. Junior, Waltrip, Jeff Burton, and Jimmy Spencer are all about to lose a lap when Ricky Craven gets into Brett Bodine off turn 4, drawing the 6th caution of the race. Jeff Gordon has a quick stop, swerving around Ricky Rudd as he gets up to speed, but Marlin beats him and Andretti is right alongside in 3rd. Andretti's crew steps up their performance, and now, thanks to Schrader's exit from the race, have a clear exit from their stall. The race restarts on lap 156 when Marlin gets a jump on Andretti. Gordon says his car is awesome and shows it by rocketing past Todd Bodine on the high side to take 3rd. Rudd enters the picture, taking 5th, and looks to continue his steady climb up the rankings. Despite mechanical issues in Rockingham, he's been running at the end of 20 consecutive Cup races and enters this race 6th in points. In a race where several teams are running older chassis, Rudd is running a brand new car. Back up front, and Andretti doesn't let Gordon catch him. In fact, he goes for the lead, getting under Marlin and clearing him on lap 161. Rudd now catches Todd Bodine, surprised that the number 66 isn't a lap down as he's holding him up. Gordon gets 2nd from Marlin, and Bobby Labonte enters the top 5, a spot where he's yet to finish at Bristol. The car Labonte runs today is the one the team set aside as their backup for several weeks, now getting to see some track time. With Park behind him, Bobby is now the one racing Todd. Rudd has gained another spot. On lap 173, Harvick is back up to 16th. 3 laps later, Todd moves up the track in turn 4, handing 5th to Bobby Labonte. It isn't until lap 188 that Gordon gets the lead from Andretti. Seconds later, the glass slipper breaks for Kyle Petty. He makes an unscheduled stop where the crew raise the hood. The car is overheating. Petty returns to the track multiple laps down with a flat engine note, perhaps due to a head gasket or rocker arm. On lap 209, Fox debuts their suspension camera on Johnny Benson's car. Harvick is up to 15th, having completely forgotten about his voltage issue from earlier, but Harvick now has to contend with Terry Labonte, who rushes past him in the high lane. Near the halfway point, there are still 29 cars on the lead lap, and many, like Terry, who pitted on the backstretch, are among the leaders. Still under green on lap 238, Gordon leads Andretti as they lap Mike Skinner. Park is up to 4th, enjoying the long run the team had hoped for. The 91-lap run comes to a sudden halt on lap 246. Jeff Burton blows a tire in turn 4 and bounces directly in the path of teammate Mark Martin, destroying both cars. Burton climbs from his car, out of the race. He'll slip to 40th, one spot ahead of Kyle Petty, who after another green flag stop pulls behind the wall with a blown engine. Burton offers to help Martin's crew, who tear out the busted radiator and now must fabricate a new mount on which to install the replacement. Back on pit road, Andretti doesn't call for adjustments for a second straight stop. He keeps the second spot behind Gordon. On the backstretch pits, Mike Skinner's tire carrier Kevin Gaybird is struck by Mike Wallace as he runs between the two cars. Gaybird shakes it off and completes the stop.
Hey, you first and foremost, are you okay?
Yeah, 10-4, Larry. It's Bristol. It's tight.
Yeah. Now, I've never seen you carry the tire that high up in the air. Is that something that you was just doing for a situation, or I know you never saw the car coming?
Well, I know it's tight here, so I kind of checked up, tried to pull the tire up a little bit, but it's just too close.
On lap 256, we're back underway with Gordon out front. In 50 of the previous 80 Cup races at Bristol, the leader at the halfway point failed to take the checkered flag. But over the next several laps, Gordon continues to pull away. Fox is about to do their next crank it up when Benson drops off the pace with a flat tire. He cut it down after contact with Kevin Lepage as the pair entered turn 3. With this settled, Fox does indeed crank it up. Andy Houston has returned to the track in 42nd place, 194 laps down, moving Kurt Busch into last. Busch's crew continues their repairs alongside Martin, while Burton's car is loaded onto the hauler, continuing another awful afternoon for Roush Racing. Back up front, Park gets second from Andretti on lap 287, then just 5 laps later gets the lead from Gordon. With 194 laps to go, Park holds a commanding lead over Gordon, and he soon bumps his old Bristol car out of the way. Mark Martin returns to the track with 176 laps to go. Busch is still in the garage, now joined by Kenny Wallace. Martin will finish under power in 34th, 88 laps down. Kenny takes 38th, dropping out with engine trouble. Nemechek, the first retiree, has now fallen to 42nd. 5 laps later, Park laps Tony Stewart, then Kevin Lepage. Behind him, Andretti sets after Gordon for the second spot, ahead of Marlin and Rudd. Harvick is up to 11th. Stacy Compton bangs doors with a struggling Todd Bodine. A crash bar falls onto the track, drawing the caution with 165 to go, ending an 81-lap green flag run. Elliott fakes coming down pit road. Park calls for a last-second air pressure adjustment. Marlin calls for one too, saying his car feels, in his words, squirmy and wormy. Park pulls a 16.6-second stop, the same as Gordon, but Andretti gets a 15.8 and leads the group off pit road. The green comes back out with 158 to go. Marlin gets the lead from Andretti, but Andretti takes it right back off turn 4. 6 laps later, Todd breaks loose on the backstretch and slams into Mike Wallace, sending the number 7 hard into the inside wall. In a desperate and dangerous move, Bill Elliott cuts to the apron to get his lap back. Andretti slows to let him by, along with his teammate Buckshot Jones, but in so doing also lets Tony Stewart back on the lead lap. The restart with 143 to go is another crank it up. Gordon takes over the 3rd spot, Harvick is back up to 8th, and Hamilton continues to lurk in the top 10. With 133 to go, Kurt returns to the race, 252 laps down in last place, and begins to close the gap on Nemechek. Skinner now joins the battle, taking 4th from Park. With 130 to go, Brett Bodine gets into Nadeau and spins him off turn 4. Todd bounces off the wall in a separate incident, and will ultimately finish in 32nd. On pit road, Marlin's crew decides not to make an air pressure adjustment, allowing him to beat Andretti off pit road ahead of Gordon and now Dale Jarrett. Andretti now feels he can make the distance on fuel. Park gets his air pressure adjustment to fix a tight condition and ends up 14th, but none of these drivers are leading. This time 3 drivers have stayed out: Kevin Harvick, Elliott Sadler, and Tony Stewart. Behind them in 4th and 5th are Ward Burton and Jeremy Mayfield, who have each taken 2 tires. Mayfield looks to win the race for one of his crew members, whose grandmother passed away the previous week. Marlin, the first car on 4 tires, now lines up 6th ahead of Andretti in 7th. Of these drivers, neither Stewart nor Sadler have even sniffed the lead all day, both of them pitted on the backstretch. Sadler hasn't even run better than 15th in the previous laps. And Harvick now leads for the first time since the early stages, before his pit road incident with Marlin dropped him all the way to 38th. The race restarts, but it doesn't take long for trouble to break out again.
Trouble over on the back.
Straighten it out. Behind him, Blaney, Earnhardt Jr., Nadeau, and Busch.
The caution is out.
That's 3 strikes on Nadeau. I believe he ought to be out. Here comes Terry Labonte and Jimmy Spencer. Johnny Benson. Here comes Skinner.
They're all going to get a lap back from Kevin Harvick.
Here comes Bill Elliott.
And he won't get a lap back.
Won't quite make it. He was way, way back.
Matt Kenseth, in the last Roush car left untouched, gets knocked sideways by Presley, triggering a pileup behind them. Blaney is stopped against the wall with Kurt before the Dodge's engine refires, and he follows Rick Mast behind the wall. Mast for the 2nd time in this race. Kurt has run just long enough to pass Nemechek by 10 laps, dropping the Oakwood Homes car to 43rd place. Kurt takes 42nd. It's Nemechek's 4th last place finish, and his first since 1995 Daytona 500. Also behind the wall is Junior, whose car slapped the wall during the pileup. Mike Skinner didn't quite get his lap back on the previous caution, so he rolls off in front of leaders Harvick and Sadler with 108 to go. As Skinner falls back, Harvick pulls away from Sadler. Behind them, Ron Hornaday Jr. has climbed to 16th after starting 40th. He'll slip back to 21st by the finish. Blaney comes off pit road with his damage repaired. He'll finish in 29th. With 85 to go, Andretti uses his 2 fresh tires to take 3rd from Stewart. He then closes the gap on Harvick and Sadler when the 12th caution falls with 79 to go. Spencer makes contact with Buckshot Jones, putting the number 44 hard into the wall and shattering one of the Dodge's brake rotors. Buckshot and his new crew chief have to settle for a 33rd place finish. Harvick lets a few drivers get their lap back, including both Lepage and Compton. It's under this caution that Jarrett surrenders a spot in the top 10 to get 4 fresh tires. He falls to 23rd and is still catching up with the tail end of the field when the race restarts with 73 to go. Jarrett will climb to only 16th by the checkered flag. Harvick and Sadler pull away as Andretti has to deal with lap traffic, In just a few minutes' time, Harvick will become only the second driver to win 2 of his first 5 Cup starts. In 1949, Red Byron won 2 of his first 5, which occurred in the first 6 NASCAR races ever run. But with 70 laps to go...
And trouble for Harvick, trouble for the leaders.
Off the pace. See, right around under caution, pick up some debris, cut a tire down.
Steve?
Flat left front tire. Kevin Harvick is going to have to pit. Flat left front tire while leading the race.
Harvick leads the most laps, 137, but will finish 24th. Just like that, Elliott Sadler and his backup car take the lead for the first time all day. It's not the first lap he's led this season. He led 2 laps in Las Vegas, but prior to that, only 11 laps in his first 2 full-time seasons. Hanging on ahead of Andretti with his fresher tires, 2 of the sport's most iconic numbers are now running first and second. But this weekend has been anything but kind to Cinderella stories. For the second time, Craven brings out the yellow when he this time gets into Todd Bodine, dropping debris on the track. Thus ends a rough day for the number 66 team. This time, Sadler too lets a few cars get their lap back, including Skinner, Elliott, and Benson. A few drivers pit, including Lepage, Jarrett, Bobby Labonte, and Elliott. But Sadler stays out on tires that have now run 101 laps and counting. Greg Stedman, Andretti's crew chief, smells blood in the water. He encourages his driver, saying he has fresher tires than anyone around him, and with any luck, Andretti could give the number 43 its first Bristol win since 1975. With 54 laps to go, Harvick gets around Sadler to put himself on the tail end of the lead lap. Behind them, Mayfield is all over Stewart for the 3rd spot. As he does, Sadler tabs the radio, saying he thinks he has a flat left front tire. He keeps up the pace, and crew chief Pat Trison tells him he must have just picked up debris running the edge of the apron. With 47 to go, Sadler's is the fastest car on the track and keeping pace with Harvick, about to put him a lap down once more. Still, Andretti draws closer. Further back, Terry Labonte takes 11th and battles 10th place runner Stacy Compton, who's rebounded despite damage to his fender. Marlin is now dropping back and is caught by Bobby Labonte and Casey Atwood. With 34 to go, Gordon takes 6th from Benson and battles Ward. Now the fastest car belongs to Mayfield, who in 3 laps shaves a 1/4 of a second off Sadler's lead. With 26 to go, he is right on Andretti's bumper, making it a 3-car race. With 18 to go, Terry Labonte is up to 8th and catching Rusty. Compton slips back to 11th. With Gordon hot on his heels, Ward is now catching up to the leaders, but with 15 to go, slides up the track and Gordon gets by into 5th. With 11 to go, Brett Bodine moves up the track to let the 3 leaders go by. Not far behind, Gordon has caught Stewart for 4th. With 7 to go, Sadler opens up a gap over Andretti. A lapped car caused Andretti to bounce his Dodge off the wall, bending the rear end and making his car too tight at the worst possible time. Behind him, Gordon tracks down Stewart, who throws the block. All 5 leaders are now on the same straightaway.
1 to go this time, last lap.
Flag is out.
Flag, hero, white flag.
No traffic, no nothing.
For the Wood Brothers.
Blue sky.
The Wood Brothers, who began when NASCAR began in 1949, but haven't won in so long. Gordon turns around Tony Stewart. Here they come to the flag. Sadler wins it. Andretti is 2nd, and Gordon crosses the line 3rd after contact, turns Tony Stewart around.
I think that'll really be a battle for turn 4 for the 4th position.
Those 2 guys will probably be meeting each other down there very shortly.
And on pit road, Stewart expresses his displeasure with Jeff Gordon.
And if when he gets down here and gets this thing wound up, he might have some more things to say.
The spin drops Stewart from 4th back to 25th, the last car on the lead lap. Only once in the season's first 6 races has he finished better than 12th. It's about to get worse. He and Gordon are sent to NASCAR's hauler. Stewart will be fined $10,000 and placed on probation until August 29th. Interestingly, his probation extends 4 days past the series' return to Bristol for the night race. All this for a moment overshadows Elliott Sadler's improbable victory.
How about Elliott Sadler, though? 80 races, his first win, and for the Wood Brothers, some of the nicest people in auto racing.
Oh, this is fantastic.
They get to go to victory lane.
Why no pit stop? You're a genius.
Well, track position was really important. We had a really good car on long runs all day. We just never get some track position, but Motograph quality parts car just ran splendid all day, and Elliott did an awesome job there at the end. Just, saved his tires and saved them for the end. And I'm so happy for Eddie and Lynn and Glenn and just for everybody. It was awesome.
Best wishes from everybody in the booth, including Jeff Hallman, who said go get him and go get to victory lane.
Let me give you
thank you very much.
A little history, folks. Some of the people who have won for the Wood brothers: Dale Jarrett, Morgan Shepherd, Kyle Petty, David Pearson, A.J. Foyt, Bill Dennis, Cale Yarborough, Tiny Lund, Marvin Panch, Curtis Turner. There is a long list. 17 different drivers have won races in Winston Cup for the Wood brothers. Buddy Baker is on that list. Neil Bonnet. And now, Elliott Sadler. Boy, he's in good company.
He is. Dale Jarrett won his first race driving that 21 car at Michigan. Now, I tell you, he'll have a lot of bologna burgers tonight. He may break that record tonight. I don't know if I'd have got up there or not. They've been frowning on that a little bit lately, but I think they'll cut him some slack. First time he's won a race.
In the midst of all that, Steve Burns.
Thanks, Mike. Elliott Sadler, what do you think about that boy? How did you win that race, and what does it mean to you?
It means more than anything in the world. It's hard to win these Winston Cup races, even finishing the top 10, but Pat Tracy made a good call to stay out. We had older tires than everybody else. We had a pretty good call. Just want to thank everybody in Motorcraft Quality Parts, Ford, Air Force, for really believing in us, seeing something in us that we didn't see. So, hey, we're so happy about this. I don't know what to do.
And you thought you had a flat tire at the end.
Yeah, I bumped with Harvick, and I thought I messed up my right front. I just probably knocked the toe out a little bit, but it was good enough to win, boys. I tell you, we're in victory lane at Bristol. We get to go to the Winston. We're going to run the Winston in Charlotte. We're going to win that one, too.
All right, go get them. We had more fireworks at the end of the race.
Sadler, the driver with a record for eating bologna burgers, 16 with mustard and onions, wins his 73rd career Winston Cup start, making him the 4th different first-time winner in the last 7 Cup races. Sadler is the 17th different driver to win for the Wood brothers, earning the team's 97th win and the 90th for the number 21. Sadler's win bumps out both John Andretti and Joe Nemechek from the upcoming running of the Winston All-Star race. Both have 5 more opportunities to bump their way back in, starting with the next week in Texas. The win also jumps Sadler to 9th in the point standings, 162 out of the lead. And after the point lead swapped in each of the previous 5 races, Dale Jarrett retains his point lead from Darlington, now by 45 over Jeff Gordon.
John Andretti, did those late cautions hurt you because your car looks very stout on long runs?
It did, but the late caution hurt me because a lap car got me up in the outside wall and it bent the rear end, and I was way too tight from then on. I drove as hard as I could to catch Elliott. The closer I got to him, though, the more I pushed, and so he did a great job. I was never going to touch him, but I was going to try and get around him, and because I don't like racing like that. I don't like people racing me like that, and he deserves it. It's a great win for him and the whole Wood Brothers team.
Well, good job. John Andretti comes home second.
John Andretti comes up just short of his 3rd career Winston Cup win, his first in just under 2 years since Martinsville in 1999. It's the first time the Petty number 43 finished second to the Wood brothers since the 1976 Southern 500, the same year David Pearson and Richard Petty were also 1-2 in their famous clash at Daytona. The number 43 hadn't finished 1-2 ahead of the number 21 since June 12, 1977 at Riverside. It's also the best finish so far for a Dodge in 2001, who are already counting the days until the return to victory lane. Unfortunately for both Dodge and Andretti, the number 43 is then found too low in post-race inspection. The runner-up finish stands, but crew chief Greg Stedman is fined $20,000 for the infraction. Terry Labonte picks up another couple spots in the final moments to take 6th, following up his season-best 5th in Atlanta. Bobby Hamilton finishes 8th, racking up top 10 finishes in half the races run so far. Ricky Rudd finishes 10th. He has 4 top 10s. Bobby Labonte falls short of his first top 5 finish at Bristol and comes home 13th. Larry McClure is cautiously optimistic with the performance of his temporary driver Kevin Lepage. Kevin was our new driver. We had new pit guys. They all communicated well. That helped us. Everything was really smooth. We changed the car every pit stop. His first performance with us was admirable. That is what we needed. We needed a settling factor as much as anything. We will go to Martinsville and test with Kevin this week, Then we will move on to Texas. We will talk next week. One race does not say everything. This team just went through something that I do not want to go through again. I will make sure the right decision is made this time for Morgan McClure. Next, the series heads to Texas, site of Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s first win a year earlier. Perhaps with all these improbable storylines, a return to the Lone Star State will see a third DEI car in victory lane.